Hello and welcome to this evening's Empower Hour. We've got a few things to cover before tonight's impressive panel of speakers starts. First off, I do want you to be aware we have a couple of events in the works for August and September. So keep an eye out for more information about our next Empower Hours in August and in September. Also, please take note of an action item that's included on one of our final slides. In-person and Zoom commentary on Xcel's Just Transition solicitation has been completed. However, your comments are still valid and it's important for the PUC to hear from the community. So please do consider taking the action that I know at least Jamie's slides will include. Possibly other of our speakers will have that info too. The chat is not available. Q&A is open though, so please ask your questions there. We'll keep track of incoming questions and they will be answered at the end of the presentation. This Empower Hour is being recorded and the video will be posted on our website at empowerourfuture.org on the events page in the next day or so. It'll also be included in an email later this week as well. So if you're not on our mailing list, please do sign up at our website at empowerourfuture.org. You'll find all of our previous Empower Hour recordings on that page, empowerourfuture.org/events. And we started these in January of 2021, so we've got a pretty amazing collection of very interesting topics and speakers. Finally, we want you to be aware that our speakers have generously agreed to stay past 7 p.m. if there are still folks on the Zoom with questions. So we'll stop at about 7 p.m. noting the hour and then continue with any additional Q&A. And now we acknowledge with respect as non-native people that the land upon which we stand, live, and learn is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, and Arapaho peoples. Let us seek to understand what it means to be in right relationship today with the traditional stewards of this land and with this land itself and with all the creatures that inhabit it. And now I would like to introduce our guests, and this is in alphabetical order. They are Vince Calvano, is a regulatory attorney representing nonprofits in electric and gas utility matters related to clean energy policy in Colorado. Vince was born here in Colorado, but grew up in different states, several different states. He graduated from Penn State and Vermont Law School. And a fun fact about him is that he has an unhealthy affinity for all things chocolate and peanut butter. Good to know. David Schlissel is the president of Schlissel Technical Consulting and former director of resource planning analysis for the Institute of Energy, Economics, and Financial Analysis, also known as IEEFA. His current work includes analyzing, writing, and speaking to the public and investment communities about the technical and financial viability of proposals to address climate change by adding new large nuclear plants and small modular reactors, SMR, or by attempting to capture CO2 from gas-fired power plants. This current work builds on his 50 years of experience as an expert witness and financial expertise about the costs and risks of investing in new commercial nuclear power plants. David also has been researching and writing about carbon capture and sequestration since 2007, as well as testifying on the risks associated with that technology in state regulatory proceedings, including before the Colorado PUC. Schlissel has engineering degrees from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and engineering and law degrees from Stanford University. He's also studied nuclear engineering at MIT in a non-degree program. Lauren Swain has been coordinator for Physicians for Social Responsibility's Colorado chapter, PSR Colorado, for over 4 years. She's worked with multiple organizations on fossil fuel policy issues in Colorado since 2012. Prior to that, she served on many political campaigns and produced several multilingual orientation videos for refugee resettlement programs in Colorado and Arizona. She earned a bachelor's degree in filmmaking and psychology at the University of Denver and a paralegal associate of applied science degree from Arapahoe Community College. And Lauren loves to travel. Good to know. And finally, Jamie Valdez, last but not least, is a native of Pueblo, Colorado, with multi-generational roots in Southern Colorado. He's the proud parent and grandparent with little ones growing up in the community. He's a founding member and leader of the Nuclear Free Colorado Coalition and an active member of Pueblo's Energy Future. Jamie served as a member of Colorado's Environmental Justice Action Task Force, appointed by former state senator Leroy Garcia to represent people of color throughout the state. Most recently, he was the Colorado state manager for a climate justice organization called Mothers Out Front, and currently serves as founder and executive director of a new environmental justice organization called Roots to Resilience, based in Pueblo. Coming from a background in racial and economic justice movements, Jamie sees his shift toward environmental justice as a natural progression and approaches all his work with an emphasis on equity, justice, and inclusion. And I think a pretty darn fun fact about Jamie is that 7 or 8 years ago, he took up archery and is a self-taught archer. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'll get out of the way and hand it over to Jamie.
Thank you, Mary. And thanks everyone for being here. Welcome. We appreciate your presence and hope to have a good time with you tonight. So, is everyone seeing my slides okay? Okay, great. So, first of all, one thing, if you don't already know Pueblo, one good thing to know about Pueblo is that we have a history of being used as a sacrifice zone for bottom of the barrel polluting industries that come into the community promising jobs and economic boost. And usually what we end up with is a lot of pollution and still being a low income community. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that to kind of set the stage for our presenters tonight. As you see here in this slide, this is Xcel Energy's Comanche coal plant here in Pueblo, Colorado, or here in Pueblo, which consists of 3 coal-fired units that generate electricity that doesn't even serve the Pueblo community, but instead gets transmitted up north, mostly to Denver area communities. Like a lot of environmental justice communities, we produce products and profits that go elsewhere. Xcel is an investor-owned utility company, so its #1 priority is profits for its shareholders as dictated by the company's fiduciary duty. According to Xcel's reporting, the plant provides roughly 100 jobs in our community of over 111,000 people, all of whom are being polluted and being put at risk of disparate climate and health impacts. The plant has been identified as the state's largest emitter of the greenhouse gas CO2 and Pueblo's #1 source of other toxic air pollutants, So Pueblo gets the pollution and Denver gets the power. By the way, I tend to call it the C3 plant because I recognize that the name Comanche for this plant is a gross appropriation of an indigenous tribal name without the consent of those tribal peoples. The Xcel Just Transition Solicitation, presently being heard by the PUC, is of major significance to the Pueblo community because it will help determine what electric generation resources will replace the energy generation, jobs, and tax revenues currently provided by the C3 plant. Before I move on, I think it's really important to emphasize the point that Pueblo is served by a completely different investor-owned electric utility company called Black Hills Energy, which gouges our low-income community for the highest prices in the state. And this is an injustice that isn't even being heard or much less addressed in this or other proceedings. My colleagues are going to talk more about the renewable energy park concept, but here are some of the key benefits I see for Pueblo. Clean energy transition. The park offers a pathway to a cleaner energy future for Pueblo and Colorado by replacing the reliance on coal with renewable resources. Economic growth. The park is projected to generate significant tax revenue for the Pueblo County and create numerous jobs in various sectors. Economic diversification. For too long, Pueblo has been beholden to one or a few large suppliers of jobs and tax revenue, meaning that when one of them moves or closes, as the Xcel plant is set to do, we're left scrambling to replace the jobs, tax revenues, and energy generation that will be lost. Diversifying our economic base can help us avoid these scenarios. Reduced risk. The phased development approach and integration with local industries can help mitigate some of the risks associated with large-scale energy projects. Grid resilience. The diverse energy sources and storage capabilities of the park would enhance the reliability and resilience of the local energy grid. Public health and environmental quality. Renewable energy is associated with reduced carbon emissions and reduced emissions of other types of toxic air, water, and soil contaminants, leading to better health outcomes and quality of life. A healthy environment and healthy economy go hand in hand. In essence, the Pueblo Renewable Energy Park represents a comprehensive strategy for replacing a retiring coal plant with a sustainable, economically beneficial, and reliable energy solution. Pueblo is ideally suited for solar development thanks to our over 300 days per year of sunshine and a variety of locations where solar developments can be installed. We're poised to be a national and even a global leader in renewable energy. Any community with a nuclear reactor will be burdened. Oh, first of all, let's talk about why nuclear is a false climate solution. Any community with a nuclear reactor will be burdened by also having to store the radioactive waste produced on site for potentially thousands of years. We would be handing that problem down to our progeny to try to solve. SMRs, as stated in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, our results show that most modular reactor designs will actually increase the volume of nuclear waste in need of management and disposal by 2 to 30 times for reactors in our case study. Small modular reactors, as proposed for Pueblo, generate more nuclear waste than conventional plants, according to research at Stanford and the University of British Columbia. Waste disposal. There are already 90,000 tons or more of radioactive waste in various sites across the country stored in one disproportionately impacted community or another, because we know for sure it's not going to be stored in more affluent communities. Water consumption. It's well documented that nuclear reactors require inordinate amounts of water, which is a resource we simply cannot afford to use in such quantities given the mega drought that's gripped the entire Western United States for over 20 years. Uranium mining. Nuclear power plants require uranium, which must be mined and enriched. Marginalized communities bear disproportionate burden of the environmental and health impacts of uranium mining and enriching. Cotter Uranium Mill in Fremont County near Canyon City, now a Superfund site with no plans for cleanup. Time is another problem. Even industry insiders, and I'm now noticing that my slide has gotten a little distorted and is not showing all the problems here, but time is a problem. Even industry insiders admit that any new nuclear development will take a minimum of 10 years to complete, and that's an extremely generous time frame. Many analyses place the minimum at more like 15 years. Given the climate crisis and the urgent need to decarbonize as much as possible, as quickly as possible, nuclear is just not capable of being a real climate solution. So what does a just transition mean? The Environmental Justice Coalition, for which I'm a witness, thinks that a just transition means a move toward a zero carbon economy free of toxic waste while ensuring that no workers, communities, or regions are left behind, and health, climate, and environmental impacts of new technologies are avoided or mitigated, especially for disproportionately impacted communities, focusing on an equitable distribution of costs and benefits and promoting social dialogue and stakeholder engagement early and often. And now I'm going to go ahead and send it over to my colleague, Lauren, if I can bring up my Zoom controls again. Here we go. There we go. Lauren, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jamie. Thank you very much for working hard to protect your community from proposals for unnecessary fuel sources like nuclear power. I'm about to share my slides here, and thanks everybody for being here with me and us. Okay, so this is a Xcel just transition proceeding at the Public Utilities Commission, and it's happening right now. I'm Lauren Swain with PSR, Physicians for Social Responsibility of Colorado. So this proceeding started, that is not accurate, I'm sorry. It started earlier in 2025 when Xcel, Colorado's largest utility, submitted its plan to close coal plants in Pueblo and Hayden, Colorado by 2030 and replace the power generated by that time. This proceeding transitions the coal communities, but also is an electric resource plan proceeding, which means that it must also address future demand for electricity in Xcel's territory as a matter of course. And this is a phase one decision setting the rules for this work, with the decision due in mid-August, but it might be delayed because this proceeding is very multifaceted, very complex, with a lot of money and economic considerations, as well as health and justice considerations and climate considerations in the game. And I apologize for the incorrect date for the introduction of Xcel's proposal. So what happens with Xcel's plan will have a major effect on the transitioning coal communities, as well as Xcel rate players, the climate, and front range air quality, and disproportionately impacted communities. Many environmental groups and other stakeholders have intervened to present evidence. And I'm sorry that I have a couple of glitches here. We're talking about the just transition, not the clean heat plan. But the most important thing to know is that your comments now can make a difference, and that includes anyone involved in other organizations that are interested in a healthy climate forward future that avoids unnecessary impacts on ratepayers, especially residential ratepayers, and promotes renewable energy. So in this 2025 proceeding right now, they are setting the rules guiding the selection of the portfolio of resources to meet future demand and replace power from those coal plants. Xcel is proposing a large ratio of wind and solar, but also storage for wind and solar energy, gas, nuclear power, hydrogen, and carbon capture are under consideration. And there are certain interests that want to advance the nuclear power and advance large gas plants for economic and other reasons. And that's what we're fighting to protect our health and our climate future. So we're seeking inclusive criteria to evaluate the proposals for the just transition, as well as health impacts assessments for every resource that is proposed, so that we are concerned, so that the Public Utilities Commission and Xcel itself will be choosing resources that are protective of health and safety, that go beyond the limited scope that others propose, which is emphasizing property taxes and jobs that came with the old coal plants. So not even looking at the greater economy of the local area outside of the borders of those prior coal plants. That's how narrowly defined some of the other interests and stakeholders want this proceeding to be. We want an inclusive criteria that evaluates proposals for their health and safety impacts, their impacts on the local economy, and their impacts on ratepayers, their impacts on the climate and our air quality. So meeting future demand, Xcel is forecasting a vastly increased load. They are proposing to bring on many new resources and spend a huge amount of money to meet what they see as future demand. But there are problems with the way that they model that future load, that future demand. There are problems with the forecast. And many of the parties have called out Xcel's modeling and are suggesting ways that it needs to be remedied so that we don't overbuild and leave stranded assets or build gas plants that go against Colorado's climate goals. Xcel is also proposing alternative ratepayer funding mechanisms to explore long-term emerging technologies, including nuclear power, hydrogen, and carbon capture, because these will not be ready by the 2030 deadline. So they're proposing new mechanisms and a new advisory board and many other things that we're not prepared to fully evaluate at this time for the purpose of exploring emerging technologies, some of which aren't so bad, like long-term, long-duration energy storage, but all of them involve subjecting ratepayers to highly speculative investments with no promise of return. Very problematic. That's called the Carbon Free Future Development Fund. And right now it's not ready for prime time, in our opinion. So we are concerned with excess investment in gas power. And just so you know, the power generated by gas, is responsible for about 1/6 of our country's GHG emissions. And it's a fossil fuel, so that means methane, and that methane is 86 times more damaging to the climate than CO2 over a 20-year period. And there are, it is seen, it's more damaging than coal to the climate by many, in many reports. It's been found to be more damaging even than coal to the climate throughout its life cycle. It's produced by fracking, which releases hazardous air and water pollutants and causes chemical spills, fires, and explosions. The production of oil and gas itself is responsible for about 40% of front-range ozone pollution. And we don't want these new gas plants to go into the non-attainment area where ozone is already above safe levels, and particulate matter and other pollutants are already too high to be healthy for the population that's already exposed to them. So nuclear power has health and safety risks. Just think about the life cycle of what it takes to have a nuclear reactor. Mining uranium contaminates air, water, and soil with radioactive materials and produces large amounts of waste. As Jamie mentioned, the Cotter mine is a great example of that. Transport and handling of nuclear fuel risks accidents and terrorist attacks. Reactor operations present ongoing risk of leaks and accidents, and there is no long-term U.S. storage facility for nuclear waste. So it's stored on site indefinitely, and that's what is happening right now at the Fort St. Vrain plant in Platteville, which was Colorado's only, I will say, experiment with nuclear power that didn't go so very well and was very expensive. Hydrogen is one of those other emerging technologies that could be funded through the Carbon Free Future Development Fund at ratepayer expense. And supplies of green hydrogen are very limited and expensive. Most hydrogen is currently derived from methane gas, and it's still not in steady supply. And hydrogen would be blended with methane gas, most likely for power generation. So it really doesn't eliminate our dependence on gas and all the problems that are associated with that. Carbon capture and storage also could be funded through the Carbon Free Future Development Fund by ratepayers. And again, an unproven technology with cost overruns and failures reported worldwide. Carbon dioxide stored is often used to extract oil through enhanced oil recovery, or EOR, as an example of what can go wrong when you store a huge amount of carbon dioxide underground. The 2020 Centartia Mississippi gas leak inundated the town with carbon dioxide, causing 45 people to be hospitalized. And furthermore, investment in carbon capture and storage, it diverts resources from investment in renewable energy and storage. So with that, I will hand it over to Vince Calvano of our partners at Colorado Renewable Energy Society for some specifics about how we are intervening in this proceeding and what we're advocating for. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, and thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I'm getting ready to share my slides here. Here we go. All right. Again, thank you, Lauren. She was one of the witnesses on behalf of PSR Colorado. I'm the attorney, and we had a couple other witnesses on behalf of CRES that are involved in the just transition solicitation that we've been talking about. And they're the ones that have done all the heavy lifting, and I'm here to give you CRES's view of the JTS here. Let's see, and starting off with a quick overview of Coal Plower in Pueblo, Colorado. And as Jamie already mentioned, there are 3 units at the Comanche power plant. One of them is already retired, the first one that came on board, I think, in the early 70s. The second unit is going to be retired at the end of this year. I think that came about in the mid to late 70s. And then Comanche 3, or C3, is the third unit, which is a supercritical unit, which is scheduled to end on January 1st of 2031, which is many years before its original 70-year lifespan. And one of the reasons it's going to be closed down early, other than all the environmental issues that come with coal, is that the C3's history has been pretty bad as far as issues. There were issues before it even started up. They had to delay the opening of the plant. There were, after that, and that was originally supposed to come in 2009. It didn't happen until 2010. And then there have been many unplanned outages since then. Obviously, there are also planned outages that happen on a regular basis for maintenance, but this C3 unit had the lowest availability of all 3 coal units from the time C3 came online. And to give you an idea of how long it's been offline at certain times, it's been offline for most of 2020 and 2022. So Xcel, to their credit, figured out how to deal with that and keep the electric system reliable even without C3 and all of its capacities. So the good thing about that is we already know we can operate without it. So in any case, a little bit more about the just transition part of the C3 plan, or obviously it's going to retire in 2031. And it will also have some operational limits in the years leading up to that retirement. And that just means their public service is going to run the plant at a lower capacity, maybe half the time, 60% of the time, things like that. It's kind of a ramping down of the usage of that plant. And public service has already agreed, and that's Xcel, Public Service Company, or PSCo. They will, excuse me, uh, they will pay a county tax to Pueblo County from 2031 to 2040. And that, payment is in lieu of the projected tax loss for that county for shutting down the plant early. And any, replacement generation that comes into the Pueblo County area from this just transition solicitation will offset that tax that's owed. And so um, there are some benefits to, bidders that bid into this process. Will get some benefits for, proposing to locate their generation source in the Pueblo County area to replace the C3 unit that's heading out. And the utility ownership target through an agreement in the previous electric resource plan was a 50% of the new resources that are acquired in this just transition solicitation. That is, there are a few caveats in there, but in general, it's 50%, which is fairly high. And we'll get to that here in a second, where I'll go over Cress's kind of issues with the JTS. And yeah, and there it is. Resources located in Pueblo get a modeling benefit, except for PV or photovoltaics. And public service company submitted testimony that claimed that there was too much solar in the Pueblo area already, and it actually should have kind of a negative value associated with it. And that was rebutted by a few other parties in this process. And Cress, of course, agrees with the other parties and not public service that, there's still room for more solar in the Pueblo area. And so just quickly, what happens at the Public Utilities Commission, to give you a very broad overview of the whole process. The Public Utilities Commission regulates electric and gas utilities, among other things. Utility files an application. In this case, it's Xcel or Public Service Company. This is the just transition solicitation that we're talking about. And Cress is one of the groups that was interested in this proceeding, and we joined forces with Physicians for Social Responsibility Colorado and Lauren, and we submitted a motion to intervene. The commission came back and said that we were allowed to be an intervener. And then, as I mentioned, we have a couple other witnesses on behalf of Cress on our policy committee that have stepped up to help read all the different testimonies that are filed, and also file testimony in response to that and participate in discussions with other parties. There was an evidentiary hearing where all the different witnesses have the opportunity to be cross-examined by other parties. And then what's coming up in a couple of days, actually on Thursday, is a final position statement. And so that's basically a legal brief where all the different parties submit their brief to the commission to say what it is they want, or what it is they recommend the commission should do about this phase one of this just transition solicitation. And the next few slides will outline some of Cress's issues in their soon to be filed statement of position. And again, I'd want to thank Ron Sinton. He was one of our main witnesses, and also Jim Gilbert as well. They teamed up with Lauren to, submit the testimony and help out with this upcoming statement of position. So a few of the issues that Cress sees is that there's a bias against maximizing use of low-cost renewables. And that's just a general bias. I mean, I'm going to be kind of blowing over a lot of this from a kind of high-level perspective, but I would suggest, if you have a lot more questions than I can answer, that you can even download our statement of position or go online to there's an e-filing system for the Public Utilities Commission. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but once you figure out how to, find documents there, you can find anything you need to know about any of these proceedings. So yes, there was a bias against maximizing use of low-cost renewables. Time of use rates, those are going to be changing right now in the public service territory. We have a shoulder rate that's a little bit higher, from 1 to 3, and then from 3 to 7 is the highest rates. Well, that's going to be changing in October to a 5 to 9 period of high rates, and then outside of that, it's all going to be low rates, and that's just during weekdays, not on the weekends and not on holidays. So that factors into this just transition because there is that time of use rate structure gives an incentive for people that have EVs to charge outside of those peak times. And so that will help alleviate that kind of peak power pressure when everybody has their AC on or getting home from work. Hopefully they're not going to plug in their car to charge up during that time frame. And so that will result in lower EV charging load than public service company assumed. And hopefully we'll get more PV on the system and less gas because of that. Um, just a second here. All right. And then the next issue is that CREST requests a resource adequacy study, and that they had found some flaws in public services resource adequacy study, and uh, public service assigned a lot of load growth to night, and they overestimated the capacity needed during the day. So in one of the things that Lauren pointed out is that one of the main issues is the load projections and how much electricity we're going to need in the future. And the idea that CREST is trying to promote is that with all the new solar PV that's on the system, we should really be pushing to try to use as much electricity during the daytime. And the PV that's already installed and that hopefully will be installed will cover these daytime capacity needs. And another issue is CREST recommends rejecting that photovoltaic penalty for new PV bids in the Pueblo area. And then CREST also recommends that public service company refine the data for renewable availability. So that's hopefully having an app or on their website. They said they're going to publish when renewable energy is going to be abundant on the system. And that will tell customers to say, hey, I should charge my car then, or I should use electricity when there's a lot of renewable energy on the system. And we also just need good definitions that are synced for that renewable availability, the role of storage, for all the different proceedings, because each one has a slightly different kind of definition of how public service company refines and defines the renewable availability. And there's all kinds of different related proceedings, from transportation electric proceedings, demand side management, time of use, distribution system planning, virtual power plants. As you can see, it kind of gets convoluted, and we're just asking them to kind of consolidate that and make that less of an issue in the future. Another one, there's a transmission adder that public service says is going to be fairly high for the Denver metro area, especially, and that works to bias against renewable energy. And there's another proposal by the staff of the commission that says that it's too high and does, this is biased against renewable energy. So we recommend that the commission side with staff's analysis and not public services in that particular issue. And again, back to the utility ownership, 50% ownership of new resources, that can add to even more profit for public service when there is a lot of renewable energy that comes onto the system, because a lot of that renewable energy cost comes right up front, because there's not that long-term investment like there is for a big gas plant or something along those lines. So again, that upfront renewable energy resource cost multiplies the utility profit compared to fossil fuel resources. And then there's also a value of lost load. That's kind of a technical term, but it's basically has to do with reliability of the electric system and how often people have outages and what should be the standard for a utility. And they should, in this electric resource proceeding, consider the value of lost load to justify, prioritize, or rank transmission or other reliability portfolio investments and projects. And an assessment of system reliability should reflect its impacts on the customer served. So that's another way of saying that outages are costly, and we should do what we can to avoid them. And using that value of lost load will have help in that endeavor. And again, outages come with a high cost. So And overall, to end up here, there are a number of big issues that are being decided once all these statements of position are filed. The commission will rule with an order. They'll discuss it in kind of a live deliberation, and then weeks after that, they'll put together a written order. And some of the decisions that they're going to be making are about the load growth and how much is the right amount to plan for. What kind of large load tariffs for, data centers or other types of large clients for public service should be put forward. Are there going to be multiple bid rounds allowed in phase two? There are a number of local issues for Pueblo, the energy park. Are they going to allow that? Are they going to allow new gas? What are the rules around the energy park going to be? Is it going to be PV centered? Things along those lines. And then finally, how are we going to procure any resources at any kind of reasonable cost with, the time we're living in now with uncertainty in tariffs and the political landscape as it is. So again, there's a lot of questions that are going to be answered here. And I would just recommend or encourage everybody to follow along more about the Public Utilities Commission, find their webpage online. They have a number of YouTube videos of all the different hearings and things that go on. And it can be kind of boring, but it'll also be kind of exciting if you get to learn a lot about regulatory policy here in Colorado. So thank you. I think I'll pass it on to David Schlissel.
Hello, everyone. My name's David Schlissel. I was a witness for the Environmental Justice Coalition in the PUC case that Vince, Lauren, and Jamie have been talking about. Tonight, I'm going to talk about two of the proposed replacements for Comanche Unit 3, a small modular reactor is one of the solutions being pushed by the city and county of Pueblo. The other one is a gas-fired power plant with what's called CCS, carbon capture and sequestration, which means piping it somewhere and putting it in the ground. Now, SMR, what's the difference between an SMR and a large reactor? Current reactors around the US are somewhere in the range of 600 to 1100 megawatts of power that they can put out at any one time. Small modular reactors are designed to be, or proposed to be, smaller than that, but not small by any means. Roughly 250 to 350 megawatts. There are currently somewhere in the range of 50, 60 different SMR designs being discussed and proposed around the world. There are 5 or 6 main designs that are being promoted in the US, some of which I will talk about. Each of the SMR designs being proposed for the US will include 3 or 4 smaller reactors as part of one large reactor. None of the SMR designs currently being marketed in the US have been built, obviously also not operated because they've not been built. Only one of these designs called the BWRX 300 has just begun construction, I believe in May, up in Canada. Small modular reactors have been built in 2 other countries, China and Russia. One is under construction in Argentina. The SMRs in China and Russia, as you can see, in China, they will eventually actually cost 3 times what was projected when construction began. In Russia, the actual price was quadruple what had been estimated. Similarly, the actual construction time for these SMRs has been far longer than that was claimed. The lesson here is be very wary of claims made by proponents of SMRs as to what they will cost and how long they will take to build. This slide shows 4 of the reactor designs, the SMR designs currently being promoted in the US. You can see that the costs, well, 3 of them, we have multiple estimates. The costs have gone up dramatically over time. This is before any of these has started construction in the US. The one on the left in yellow, NuScale's proposed SMR, the cost went up by 138% in just 3 years, the estimated cost. The next SMR by a company called Xenergy, the estimated cost is increased by 72%. The SMR on the right in red is it's called the Natrium. It's the Bill Gates promoted reactor. Its cost has skyrocketed in just a short period of time. We also don't know when these SMRs will be ready. As I mentioned, in China and Russia and Argentina, where they've been built and are being built, they're taking longer than originally claimed. The NuScale SMR was originally supposed to be in service in 2015 to 2016. By the time it was canceled in 2023, the proposed commercial operation date had slipped to 2029 and 30, similarly with the XE100 reactor. Now, nuclear supporters will claim that the cost of building new reactors will go down over time. That's completely contrary to the actual experience in the US, where the cost of building new reactors has gone way up over time. You can see in the bottom dashed line is what promoters will claim is that the more of these SMRs of a certain design you build, the cost of a new one will go down. But they don't include all of the costs. In specific, they exclude inflation and financing costs. When you include those, you can see in the top in the blue line that the costs of building new reactors will go up over time, not down as promoters claim. That's part of that. This is a cost comparison I presented in my testimony. The 3 lines on the bottom are wind, it's photovoltaics, and then photovoltaics plus battery storage. You can see they're much less expensive than the range of nuclear costs. Very expensive. Nuclear is a very expensive alternative. Now switching to carbon capture and storage. CCS is touted as a part of reducing emissions of CO2 from fossil-fired power plants. The industry and promoters of CCS claim that it will capture more than 90% of the CO2 from a gas plant or another industrial facility, and do it reliably and consistently over time. That's not true. Now, as I mentioned before, and actually Jamie and Lauren also mentioned, one of the 2 alternatives proposed for Pueblo is a gas plant with carbon capture. It's difficult to capture CO2 from a gas-fired unit, excuse me. I can answer questions about the reasons why that is so, but let me keep going so I can get through the slides. There's only very little experience with carbon capture. There are roughly 30, 35 active carbon capture projects in the world. Numerous projects have been canceled or have failed. This chart shows 17 of the existing CO2 capture facilities in the world. The owners of these facilities, CO2 capture facilities, generally do not come out and say how well they're operating, how much CO2 they're capturing, what's called their capture rate. How much CO2 do they capture divided by how much CO2 do they produce? Remember, the industry claims 90-95% or higher capture rates. You can see here that there's no actual experience capturing CO2 that well, doing with such a high capture rate. When you look at what's the capture rate from a gas-fired power plant, the industry will claim 95%, but that's only at the plant site. There's also also methane emissions upstream, which are between where the natural gas that's burned in the plant is the well where it's produced to the power plant. As Lauren mentioned, methane is a very potent greenhouse gas, roughly 85% times as potent as CO2. It's a mistake just to focus on the capture rate at the proposed facility. Now, there are 5 bars here. The 95% is assumed at the plant site. If you include the upstream methane emissions, the capture rate would only be 55% of the CO2 equivalent. Then if you use some of the captured CO2 for enhanced oil recovery, the capture rate declines because the CO2 that's used for enhanced oil recovery produces more oil, which is then burned, which then produces a further carbon dioxide. The federal subsidies for carbon capture provide incentives for the production of more CO2, not less. The recent bill passed by Congress will give tens of billions of dollars of incentives to oil and gas companies to use captured CO2 to produce additional oil. The average CO2 capture costs will be much higher than was historically been claimed, and will be higher if the capital costs are higher than are currently projected. Here is a chart showing the federal subsidies. You can see how they went up from 2008 to 2018 to 2022. And I apologize, I did not update this. The bill recently passed by Congress gives an $85 per metric ton subsidy for CO2 that's permanently sequestered underground or used for enhanced oil recovery, and keeps the $180 per metric ton subsidy for any CO2 captured through direct air capture from the atmosphere. An untested, unproven technology. And that's the end of my slides.
Great, David, thank you so much. And given that we're at the top of the hour, we want to just acknowledge that. And I will go through a little bit of the housekeeping and then we'll return with Q&A with our speakers. So thank you all for being here, especially Jamie, David, Lauren, and Vince for joining us tonight. I also want to thank the other Empower Our Future communication team members who are integral to making these Empower Hours happen. They are Paul Cullen, Chris Hoffman, Steve Whitaker, and Julie Zonizer. Later this week, this video will join the other recordings of all past Empower Hours on our website at empowerourfuture.org/events. And again, keep an eye out for upcoming Empower Hours. Also, again, please consider signing the petition or providing feedback per the slides. Oh my goodness, yes, that Jamie is now going to get back on and present. Jamie will actually wrap up and then we'll go to the questions. But we've got the housekeeping done. I'll say thank you for joining us tonight. And Jamie, back to you. Sorry about that.
No problem at all. Okay. So, as I stated earlier, in essence, the Pueblo Energy Park represents a comprehensive strategy for replacing a retiring coal plant with a sustainable, economically beneficial and reliable energy solution. We hope you will join us, the Environmental Justice Coalition, in supporting this idea, and also taking all the actions that were presented earlier by Vince and others on the presentation. For more detailed information, you can visit the Energy Innovations website at energyinnovation.org and download the full report on the renewable energy parks concept. You can take action with Roots to Resilience with any of these links right here. And then more importantly, we hope you will take action with us regarding this Public Utilities Commission proceeding, the Just Transition Solicitation. You can sign our petition at the website there, www.cleanupxcel.org/take-action. We have a petition that's going to be submitted to the Public Utility Commissioners. And you can also still submit written public comment to the PUC. We ask you to join us in asking them to take a broader approach to a just transition for impacted communities than just focusing on the jobs and economic aspects. We'd like them to consider health impacts, climate and environmental impacts on especially those communities that have already borne a disproportionate burden of pollution and health and climate impacts. We'd like you to also join us in supporting the Pueblo Renewable Energy Park, as I already mentioned, as well as opposing continuing to burn fossil fuel gas at Cherokee Gas Plant. We have a public comment toolkit if you'd like to check that out. There's a bit.ly link there that I've included. It's bit.ly/ or it's bit.ly/XLJTS toolkit. So that's once again the Just Transition toolkit. So hopefully that'll make it easier for folks to remember. And if you have any questions or would like to get in contact or get involved, please feel free to reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to help you get involved. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jamie, and thank you to all of our presenters. And I will lead us through the question and answers. And I noticed that Jamie and Lauren have provided some written responses to those answers. We'll revisit those so they can be read into the recording so that the future viewers of this presentation can have the full benefit of the Q&A. But I'm going to take a point of personal privilege and ask a question that isn't part of the Q&A, and that has to do with the Trump administration advocating for continued use of coal-fired power plants. Is there any indication that this policy will impact the planned closure of the Colorado coal-fired generation? And anybody who wants to respond would be welcome.
I can take a first stab, but others are welcome to join in. But I don't think it's going to affect the agreement that's already been signed and in progress. Obviously, this whole proceeding is part of that to get C3 offline by the end of 2030. So, who knows what could potentially happen, but I don't see it happening since it's so well along the way and all this process is happening to, figure out how to replace it and everything. So I would hope not, I guess.
Anybody else like a response to that? Like to respond? Great. Well, let's move into those that have been Q&As that have been entered, and I invite the panels to look at the Q&A box and click on the answered tab up there so you can see the question and the answers. And I'm going to read the question, and then those of you, it looks like Jamie and Lauren, who have typed responses, if you could verbalize your response so it goes into the recording. So this is from Ryan Sedgley, and his question is, why is geothermal not a much bigger portion of all those technological solutions to decarbonizing? Colorado is leading in this technology, and we have the means to do this now. And Jamie, if you want to, you can either read or verbalize your response, and Lauren, you can add to that afterwards.
Sure. Yes, I responded that it's definitely a part of the conversation, and we in the Environmental Justice Coalition are definitely open to the idea of it being a part of the renewable energy park concept if that concept ends up being implemented. However, to my understanding, there are still some challenges with geothermal technology, as there are with a lot of emerging technologies. But I do believe Colorado is making progress on this issue, and so it's very possible. And I'm hopeful actually that we will see geothermal energy develop further as time goes by.
Great, thank you, Jamie. And Lauren, you had a written response. If you want to verbalize that, it'd be appreciated.
Well, the state of Colorado is exploring geothermal energy power, but as of now, it isn't ready to deploy for the purpose of power generation. So there are other uses that may be easier to capitalize on right now, but it doesn't mean that we can't in the future. And I'm sure there are a lot of different opinions about how ready we are in terms of using geothermal power for electric generation. And I hope that it accelerates. I share Jamie's hope for that. As I say, there's a lot of technical obstacles and different opinions about how easy they are to overcome, but we certainly need to try harder.
Great, thank you, Lauren. Vince or David, do you want to add to that response in any way?
I think they said it well, and I would just echo what they both said, in that it's a technology that takes a lot of resources to put together to generate electricity. So it's pretty costly, and it's kind of location dependent. And as Lauren mentioned, it's kind of on a longer time scale than we're looking at least in this JTS, in order to get it something like that online in time to serve as a replacement resource.
Great, thank you, Vince. David, anything to add? Okay, a question comes in from Scott Miller, and this is directed to Vince. Vince has provided a written response. If he would like to verbalize it, I'm going to read it for Vince. Does Piesco get to pass the payment of the 2031 to 2040 taxes onto the ratepayers? And Vince, you
Yes,
have a
the
response.
answer is a simple yes on that one because it is considered part of, public services expenses to, run their system, even though it's something that is there. It's part of the just transition. You can look at it that way. It came about in the last resource plan where that was agreed to that to keep Pueblo whole, that public service would keep paying those taxes at least for the 10 years there. And, if, as I mentioned, any resources that could replace that lost generation come in and provide tax revenue, that would be taken out of those payments that Xcel would make.
Great, thank you, Vince. Any other of our panelists wish to comment on that question?
Vince, could I follow up with another question? Have prior rate case proceedings accounted for that yet, or are we likely to get a rate case that includes an increase to cover that cost?
I don't believe that the latest rate case has rolled those costs into base rates necessarily, but I would guess the next one would, and I don't think it would be one of the more controversial things to talk about in a rate case because it is an agreed just transition part of the process. And in general, say if the unit was still there and generating, they would still be paying those taxes. And so it's a little bit different in the sense that that plant isn't there, so it's not a used and useful plant, so it might, excuse me, otherwise not be, uh, I forget what the prudent cost, but it is prudent in the sense that it was part of the bargain for closing down the plant early.
And so it would be paid already regardless if the plant were open. So really the rate case is about additional cost to make up for the lack of that plant, arguably.
Well, yeah, I mean, the rate case is for all the costs, so, the ones that are coming up here for the replacements, but also the ones that are already spent.
Yes, thank you.
Anything further from any of the panelists on this particular question? Okay, moving ahead to a multi-part question from Nat Mulu, directed to all of our panelists. And he wants to also thank you for your hard work and devotion to this active engagement. His first question is, are there a noticeable group or groups of local and out of community business investors, not just Xcel or the PUC, generating investment interest in clean energy parks in the Pueblo area? And I see that Lauren has provided some links for those who are viewing this live, can see those links. And Jamie has indicated that he has an answer that he was wanting to give to this. Go ahead, Jamie, if you have anything to comment further.
Yes, thank you. And thanks, Nat, for the really great questions. We haven't really seen groups of investors really pushing interest on in this idea in the area, whether local or outside, but there have been conversations within some of the groups locally that I'm involved in about how exactly that would be very helpful. And there's one development investor in the area that is, as I understand it, kind of moving on from one job and might be good to contact and see if they might have any interest. But for right now, we haven't seen a lot of investors jumping on this. It's still a novel idea and we're still trying to get it out there. So I do hope that we'll see that interest from some investors and see some movement on this. For right now, we're really just hoping that the Public Utilities Commission will order Xcel Energy to fund a study on the renewable energy park and move toward implementation of it as soon as possible. As far as, let's see. Yeah, I agree. Tech companies, hopefully seriously getting on top of the planning, financing, and community outreach is needed. Yes, I agree. We're working hard on community outreach, but when you don't have like a huge budget, like we've seen, for example, Black Hills Energy use when they try to fight us on certain things, it's just a lot harder to get that out into the public. So we're glad for any help that we can get to do that outreach work. And so we encourage you to join us and get involved if you're interested. As far as Pueblo area youth organizations, we haven't really heard from them. Although we have heard from some folks from Pueblo Community College. Some students have been in contact with us. They actually made a video as a part of one of their school projects that is about the just transition solicitation. And at the end, they put forward some asks for the Public Utilities Commission and for the public to help out with this issue. So we have heard from them. They are very much on board with the energy park. But as far as Pueblo area youth organizations, I haven't heard from any. I don't know what their opinion of the concept is. I would love to get that information. Right off the top of my head, I'm thinking about the Boys and Girls Club. So yeah, that's a great idea. And thank you for putting it out there. That's something that we who are working on outreach need to definitely start moving toward and working on.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Any of our other panelists wish to comment on these series of questions?
I was just going to add that there is like a group called Energy Innovations that is looking into the energy park idea, and I don't know exactly who all comprises that group, but I know there's some long duration energy storage groups like thermal batteries, things of that nature. And then I think there's one trial on public service system out in the Pueblo area, the Form iron air battery system. I don't remember all the details, but things like that are happening there. Whether or not that officially becomes part of the energy park, I don't know, but hopefully more, environmentally sound, long duration energy storage type tech companies would come in and save the day.
Great, thank you, Vince. Lauren, you're able to view the question, I guess, in its completion. Anything you want to comment from Nat's question?
Not at this time.
Okay, great. There is a question in the chat here amongst the panelists that was directed towards David. Unfortunately, David has had to depart because he's got to catch a plane. So anyway, I don't see any additional questions. I want to take this opportunity to thank our panelists for sharing with them the information they have on just transition, and also to encourage those who are watching this to engage with the PUC, to contribute comments on this particular process, and hopefully be very supportive of the Pueblo community as they face this transition, and knowing that the rest of the state is in support of this just transition to a new, cleaner energy source for the Pueblo area. And unless there's further comments by any of the panelists, I will turn it back over to Mary.
And I'll just say thank you also. And I see again another question for Dr. Schlissel from Leslie Glustrom. And I will email him and see if he can't give us answers to those questions. And we can include those on the website. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate what you're doing. I think the last thing I would request, though, if anyone knows, what sort of time frame is the PUC operating on in terms of the JTS?
Well, I can try to help answer that. I think Lauren also had some of that in one of her slides. But so as I mentioned, in a couple of days, the statements of position are due, and I would also just quickly like to add on to Jamie's request for comments. One of the technicalities is for groups, if you're a member of CRESS or PSR Colorado or Roots to Resilience or any of the groups that intervened, technically you are already represented as an formal intervener, so public comments aren't the way you're supposed to, present your ideas, that it goes through your group. But that being said, you can still provide public comment, even if you're a part of CRESS or a part of one of those groups that intervened. You would just comment on your own. Don't say that you're commenting on behalf of CRESS, because as you notice, CRESS is already involved in writing a statement. But back to the timeline and the schedule. So those are due in a couple days, the last brief, and I would urge you to get your comments in before the end of the day, before 5 p.m. on Thursday, because that's when the official record closes. So if you are going to do a written comment, please try to get it in before Thursday at 5 on the 17th. And then there's any number of weeks, probably a month maybe, until the commission meets, schedules a deliberation to discuss all the issues on the JTS. It probably will take a few meetings, because there are a lot of issues, a lot of parties, a lot of statements of position to go over. And then it'll be another month or so. I think Lauren had in there the kind of the end date was mid-August, I believe. But that could be delayed as well. But I think mid-August is when we would hope to have a final written order, but we'll be lucky to have it by then.
Great. Thank you, Vince, for that.
And we also encourage other groups to comment and not just individuals. So if you have another group that is not intervening in this proceeding formally, we do very much appreciate other groups making comments and including your own outreach to those groups, even if it's a narrow issue, like a concern about, local pollution or local facilities or even the cost, just the cost for ratepayers, the cost for small businesses, because if we have too much, if we have stranded assets, then we're all on the hook for that. Especially if they're gas facilities, then we're all breathing pollutants and suffering climate effects for no reason. In the short term, if we wait, and if we don't have these large load, if we don't cater to these large load projections, then we can allow things like long duration energy storage to develop, or geothermal to develop and meet that demand if we don't invest and overinvest in gas, and if we don't start plunging new investment into nuclear.
Great. And Jamie, I don't know if you could share your very last slide for people to take the opportunity to use their cell phone to take a picture of that to help them quickly be able to respond.
Happy to. Is everyone able to see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Thank you all, and thanks everyone for being here.
Well, I think that'll conclude it, and it's been a very informative evening. And thank you all for taking your time to share the information on JTS. And for all of our attendees, I hope you found this informative as well. And do look to take action. That's the point. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. Good night.